Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. So today we're going to talk about climate information for the wine sector and the work that we do in Aspect. So first we have a keynote speech from Antonio Grassa from Sograve, and then we will go on to climate predictions for the wine sector by Carlos Delgado. Followed by some more information on the prototype we developed in Aspect by Veronica Torralba from Barcelona Supercomputing Center. And then we'll have our user's perspective by Xavier Bordes from Colorado New, and followed by some what climate information is important for the agriculture sector by Kexin Yang from the University of Leeds. And at the end, we'll end with a discussion. So I will give the floor to Antonio, if you want to share your screen.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here today. I will be presenting at the request of the Aspects project an overview on the challenges that the wine sector have from climate change. I will have an overall evaluation of the whole issues at play. Also, I will refer the need to in a couple of ways to change the fundamental mindset of how to address or how we have been addressing these challenges in the wine sector to new perspectives, so that we can accept the new tools and make good use, deriving value from the tools that are being produced. And finally, I will focus some examples of needs that we require from climate service providers, so that we can have value-driving inclusion of climate services and climate tools in decision-making of the wine sector, so that we can continue to provide value for consumers and for the overall society. So just to begin here with these two facts that we all know, but it is important in the scope of the wine sector to have present, as this will underpin everything that I will be talking after. So first, the awareness of the impacts that we are more likely to see happening, considering that in terms of the global surface temperature change, we are most likely looking by the end of the century to a value that should be in excess of 2 degrees, maybe even 2.5 or 2.7. This would be this region here. And we can see that in terms of biodiversity loss, in terms of structural change, plant mortality, wildfire, and carbon loss, we are in a really dangerous zone. These are all 5 impacts that will affect dramatically the sector of viticulture, much like most other agricultural sectors. But also here, the complex nature of how these impacts will affect everything from the productivity of our production models and setups, with an enhanced probability for disruptions, and also the human dimension of health and also social factors. So this is a complex crisis that requires complex solutions. Now, on the wine sector, it has been for more than or for almost 15 years well aware that the historical situation that we have had in the Mediterranean and pretty much in Europe, with very well defined regions with high potential to produce quality wine, in this case typified by these four conditions in climate terms, that will create a high probability, which is indicated by this complex indicator on the period 60 to 1000. So the red areas are the areas with a very high probability of having all years as optimal years to produce wine. When we then look into future decades on 2041, 2070, under mild climate change scenario, we already see a loss of significant areas in terms of potential for production of quality wine, but also a dilution of the pre-existing areas. We hardly have any red areas anymore. So we have a decrease in the potential to produce quality in what have been the established wine regions of Europe, which will translate into consumers not finding anymore what they are used to from the different regions, and as you can imagine, with impacts in terms of the business. Those impacts are also followed by impacts at the level of the operational management. For example, in terms of risk for people working under the open air, in this case, with a combination of high temperatures and medium to high levels of humidity, creating an increased share of moments where we have life-threatening conditions in most European regions, with specific focus on the southern Atlantic regions. Also, in terms of loss of suitability, here we can see the historical suitability of the Douro Valley for one of its main grape varieties, Tinta Roriz, that has an ideal growing season average temperature values between 16 and 18.5. And what is projected for the period starting on the next decade, a total loss of suitability to the use of what is today still the second most planted grape variety. And also a verification that when we use individual varieties separated in blocks, like it has been done in the past 30 years in order to increase the efficiency of cultivation, we witness a decrease in yield potential. Whereas when we have mixed varieties in the same block, we can see a stabilizing effect of the mix. So a need to go back a little bit on efficiency so that we acquire resilience. This makes us think of systems, because it is important, and I brought this example here today, because this is what we are looking for. About 10 years ago, we auctioned a bottle of a wine that had been produced 200 years before. So the wine was auctioned, it was tasted before being auctioned, and 200 years after the production date, the wine was still of a very high quality. So now what we are looking is into ways of creating vineyards that we can produce wines that can have the same level of potential and longevity as the ones we have seen in the past. In this way, we need to address the complexity of the wine system. We have to look into the system in terms of the interrelations, how it evolves, have a holistic approach, consider feedback loops that inform us on how management is working, and more use simulations that start from the climate, translate into production variables, and then onto the grapevine physiology, and finally the wine quality. In this way, we need to start thinking about the vineyard not as a unique situation separated from its context, but rather the opposite. Look at it integrated in the ecosystem with all the interrelations that the ecosystem brings, so that when we manage the vineyard, we consider the impacts that that management has on the ecosystem and how those impacts then reflect back on the production model of the farm. Here, we need solutions that will have to be translated as climate tools. And I borrowed a sentence from your deliverable 5.3, where it was indicated, and I very much agree, that understandability of information and the perceived lack of expertise is, in fact, a very consistent and very widely felt barrier to use. We need to make sure that the information that is communicated, and especially the climatic information which sits at the base of the decision-making process, is understood as intended. So we need to derive workflows that support decision-making. For example, for suitability analysis, based on the results from Project Med Gold, we have developed internally for the wine regions where we work solutions like this, where we have the information that we derived from the project. We represent it over the same space, the same geographical space that we are using. We cut off for the geographical area of the region, and then we filter out according to the conditions that condition the suitability of varieties. We also need support for probabilistic decision making, understanding how the decision matches the prediction and what are the consequences when that happens in economic terms, not just operational, and also a full consideration of the ecosystem in a holistic way. In this way, agroecology, as being proposed by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, stands out as an important way of incorporating scientific knowledge together with informal knowledge derived from the experience, from the operational experience in the field, but also integrating them under a co-creation and knowledge sharing way that allows all these elements of efficiency and resilience to synergize, use the diversity, not just from the crop, but also of the surrounding context, all of it under a responsible governance framework. So this is what we need to keep on being leaders of our respective sectors, and to continue to develop a sound business model that will sustain itself over the next decades, which will be very challenging indeed. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take questions when the moment comes.
Thank you very much, Antonio. And just to say that during the webinar, feel free to add any questions in the chat, and we'll address them either after each presentation or at the discussion. So if there are no questions for Antonio, I think we can move with the next presentation. So Carlos Delgado from Barcelona Supercomputing Center, please go ahead.
Thanks, Andrea. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I am Carlos Delgado, and together with Verónica Torralba, both researchers at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, will be presenting the climate predictions that have been developed and produced within Aspect for the wine sector. And also, so I will start presenting a general introduction to climate prediction and seamless prediction. And then Vero will focus on the co-developed climate information for the wine sector in collaboration with Codorniu. So first, here you can see the evolution of the temperature over Spain. And in addition to this long-term climate trend due to climate change, you can see that every year is different. And this is a major challenge for many sectors. For example, for health, for nature, for water management, for agriculture, for coastal areas, and for forests. So with climate information, we can make decision making to minimize risk and maximize opportunities related to these climate variations. And in Aspect, we are focusing on the seasonal to multi-decadal timescales. So this climate information can be extracted from climate predictions. So climate predictions fill the gap between the weather forecast that we use every day for having information for the following days and the long-term climate projections. And it is possible to predict climate for the next months, seasons, and years, thanks to the slow variability that some components of the climate system have. For example, the atmosphere changes very, very quick, but the ocean changes slower. So this gives us predictability for these longer time scales. And these climate predictions are produced with coupled climate models. A climate model is a software, a numerical software that solves the physical equations and then gives us the paths that the climate system can follow for the future. So, for example, the seasonal predictions are initialized with observations every month, and they give us predictions for the next 6 months or 12 months. Then the decadal predictions are produced once per year, and they provide predictions for the next 10 years. And yeah, because of the complexity of the climate system and also because of the errors in observations, we ran many simulations with the same models, slightly varying the initial conditions. And then to each one of these simulations, we call them ensemble members and gives us a possible path that the climate system can follow. And in this way, we can estimate an uncertainty of the climate predictions and also create probabilistic forecasts. For example, we can give probabilities for warmer conditions expected for the next seasons. And one of the main objectives of Aspect is the creation of seamless information. The reason is that every time scale so the predictions for every time scale is produced with a different forecast system. For example, there are forecast systems for the seasonal time scales, and then other forecast systems for the decadal time scale, and other climate models for the climate projections. But there are some gaps, for example, for the multi-annual time scale and for the multi-decadal time scale. So many decisions are taken across time scales, for example, seasonal to decadal. And then if a user needs consistent information for these two time scales, they will have to switch at some point from seasonal forecast systems to decadal forecast systems. And this introduces incoherencies in the climate information. So within Aspect, we are trying to fill these gaps. And this is an illustration that we use to explain this concept of climate information. Imagine that you want to take a photo, a picture that if you see a line, you may see first a flower, then you can see a house, and then you can see a mountain at the bottom. And in climate prediction, to do this, you would have to use a different tool to take a photo of different things. For example, seasonal prediction for the flowers, decadal for the house, and climate prediction for the mountain. And with the seamless prediction, what we try is to make a single product to provide a consistent information across all these time scales. And now Vero will present the overview of Aspect. Vero, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carlos. I'm Verónica Torralba, as Carlos was mentioning before, and we have been working together and with more members of our BSc team in the Aspect project. In this project, we focus on timescales from seasonal up to multi-decadal. So the idea is to use the seamless climate information that Carlos was describing before to provide information for multiple sectors. But in this project, next. Yeah, in this project, we are following this user-centered approach in which we are collaborating with specific users to develop very tailored information by using the scientific outputs generated within the Aspect projects. For this, we are co-developing these prototype climate services for agriculture, finance, governance, humanitarian, and disaster response. The idea of these case studies is to use them as the basis of usability and socioeconomic assessment of the seamless climate predictions, and these case studies will allow us to explore the potential benefits of these new sources of information. Also, the idea is, even if we are following this user-centered approach in which we are collaborating with the specific users in the co-development of this climate information, is to use these case studies for to explore also the possibilities of upscaling the information to other sectors that are interested also in having access to the seamless climate information. Next. Well, as Antonio was mentioning before, climate is, in particular, climate is an important factor in the wine sector for multiple activities. Here I wrote this thing on wine production, but I think that the production is not the only thing affected by the climate variability. But also, it's important to consider, well, next, Carlos, maybe you can, sorry for that. That the current conditions and also the climate change conditions are strongly affecting this sector in multiple ways. So having access to climate information at multiple timescales can benefit them, and this information can support for the identification of the possible challenges affected with climate variability and climate change, and also to develop some strategies to reduce the impact of this climate in their activities. In the Aspect project, we are collaborating very closely with Codorniu, and we are trying to develop some information that is very tailored to specific needs that have been discussed with them in different interviews and different sessions that we are having during the project. But something that we have seen is that there are decisions that are not focusing on only one specific timescales, but they span multiple timescales. Next, Carlos. Yeah, these decisions that in which we are working more in the Aspect project, because as the project has a limited amount of time, we decided to focus on these two specific decisions: spring frost protection and water management, because they require information at multiple timescales. For example, in terms of the spring frost, having information about the occurrence of frost in the next season can be beneficial to reduce the impacts of this frost in the wine production for one specific year. But if this sector is going to be affected by more events of spring frost protection in the future, maybe they can decide if they need to invest in more sophisticated systems to reduce the impact of the frost in the crop. And also regarding the water management, particularly here in Catalonia, but I think in many other Mediterranean countries, the limited amount of water resources during the summer due to droughts is an important problem. So having information at multiple timescales is very important for the sector. In the case study of the wine sector, we are not the only ones that are participating. I want to mention as well that people from the Oxford University and also for CMCC, they are developing also some tailored information for the wine sector. One example of the kind of information that we are developing is the forecast quality assessment. So we are assessing the current value of the climate predictions to provide useful information in terms of climate variables like the classical temperature and precipitation, that I think this is also important for the upscaling of these products. But also we are working with more tailored indicators that can be, for example, having 3 consecutive days with temperatures exceeding 36 degrees, that this is something very specific for the region, and we are assessing the potential of the models to provide useful information at these timescales, and we are providing this information to Codorniu. In the second, another point that we are exploring with Codorniu is the implementation of downscaling methodologies to adapt the outputs of the climate models that are very coarse. So here you can see that for 1 degree, the amount of information that you can provide about the rye mud vineyard is going to be very limited. So we are implementing some downscaling methodologies to provide more local information. Also, one important point, not only for the development of climate information for the wine sector, but also for the project in general, is the provision of seamless climate information. As Carlos was mentioning before, until now, the climate community has been mainly working on seasonal or decadal timescales, but the provision of consistent information, for example, at seasonal and decadal timescales, is something that requires the implementation of some methodologies to combine these two timescales. The objective of this is to enhance the quality of the coherent climate information, but at the same time to avoid any kind of inconsistency. And here, well, you can see one example of how this has been done in the context of seasonal and decadal timescales. Something that we have been also working a lot during the project is regarding how to present this information to the users in a user-friendly way, or in something that at least can be helpful for Codorniu. So we have been presenting Xavi in that case, but we have been discussing how is the best way to show this information. There are complex graphs, like, for example, the probability distribution function. Also, we showed some bars indicating which is the probability of a variable being above or below normal. Also, we have been discussing if the information needs to be showed in terms of maps or in terms of time series. And during all this co-exploration process, we have defined which is the best way of summarizing this information for Codorniu in that case. So we decided that we wanted to generate something that can be delivered every month. So in that way, we can be collaborating very closely with Codorniu, and they can be more familiar with the products that we are offering. So we decided to create this bulletin that is a PDF that will be sent to Codorniu. Well, now we have done some prototypes, but the idea is that we can share this in every month with them, so they can have access to information regarding the two decisions that are relevant for them, that in that case are frost protection and water management. And we are providing this information for Catalonia, as this region is the most relevant for the activities of Codorniu. In this bulletin, we have divided 4 sections. So first we have like an introduction with a summary of the expected conditions for the spring frost and also for the water availability. Then we are providing the user guide with some information to help the interpretation of the plots. And then the 2 other sections regarding the seasonal and decadal predictions for each specific decision. Next. In terms of indicators for each decision, we have been defining some indicators that can be more relevant. For example, in terms of frost protection, we are considering the frost days and the growing degree days, as having frost days in a moment in which the plant has started to develop can be more problematic, as if they have frost days when the plant has not started this process. Also, regarding the water management, we are providing information about precipitation, temperature, a drought indicator that is this SPEI, also a heat wave indicator that can be this having 3 consecutive days with temperatures exceeding 36 degrees, and also we are providing the growing degree days. I think that's all from our side. Please let us know if you have any questions or any feedback, or if you want to give a look to the survey at some point. It's something that we will be happy to share.
Thank you, Carlos and Vero. So we have a question in the chat. So the question is if the forecast, especially the seasonal to multi-annual, considers changes in biodiversity and ecosystems in addition to land use.
It's a very good question, and I am not totally sure, but I don't think so. Vero,
I'm not sure. I don't think these changes in biodiversity and ecosystems are considered. I know that, for example, the climate models, they have a land component, so they are considered that this is a specific model to simulate the variability of the land surface, and as this can be, for example, changes in land use. But I don't know the information on biodiversity and ecosystems is considered in it's not model. I think there are some initiatives, in fact, here in our team exploring these options to integrate this information in the models, but I don't think this is in the real-time systems that we are using to produce operational information.
Great, thank you both. And we have another question. Is the service providing only climatic risk assessment, or does it also include an economic translation of the risk?
Well, maybe I can say something I didn't mention here because of the lack of time, is that also one important task in our project is to assess the value of the products we are offering. So we have one devoted task to analyze both the value of the system in economic ways, but also in some other ways that can allow us to consider the benefit. Particularly in that case, we are applying a cost loss analysis that for the wine case study, but in the project we are assessing in a more or less consistent way the value of these climate services we are producing, not only for the wine sector but also for the other case studies. But now this task is starting, so I think until the end of the project we will not have some results to be shared.
Great. Thank you very much, Vero. So if there are no more questions, I think we can go to Xavi Bordes from Codorniu, who is one of our super users in Aspect, co-developing together with the researchers these different indicators and climate service. So Xavi, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I will share a small presentation. Can find it, yeah, here. Okay. My name is Xavi Bordes, as Andrea said, and I am the viticulture manager for the Raimat Vineyards at Codorniu. And I have been participating, we as a company, in the Aspect project as a super user. Today, I want to share with you a practical perspective of how climate information affects our decisions in the vineyard, and also how Aspect can help us deal with increasing climate variability that we are facing. This is the structure of this presentation that is intended to be brief, but we will talk about all these points. First, why climate information matters. Climate is one of the main drivers of vineyard decisions, as also Antonio said, and also Vero, that it affects all the stages of the plant, both burst, irrigation planning, ripening, dynamics, also harvest timing, the disease conditions of every year depends on the weather, precipitation, humidity, wind speed, temperature, and looking also forward, of course, long-term climate projections also can support bigger decisions such as varietal choices, vineyard renewal, or business expansion. So, as you can see, we need climate information across multiple time scales. For example, here we can see like in seasonal information helps us in many ways, from spring frost protection, what I was saying, water management, canopy management, grape quality. In the decadal period, we can also have a spring frost protection in order to decide whether to invest in frost protection systems or not. Also, how this climate change will affect the grape quality, and also long-term climate projections that support that bigger decisions of business expansion. So, What the key challenges we are facing today? In recent years, we have observed much more pronounced climate variability. So both burst is occurring earlier, most of the times. Spring frost continues to appear and cause significant damage. We are facing more drought episodes, also more heat waves, and this sometimes evolves in a clear acceleration of phenology. All these things leads to imbalances or changes in the balance of grape composition, and also adds, as you see the big picture, that we have great uncertainty in how each season will unfold. So this is the reality we are working with, and it's why climate information is becoming very important for decision making. Aspect Vero set all these indicators that is providing to us. These are practical indicators that we can actually use. So, for example, frost damage and frost day indicators help us assess risk during sensitive growth stages, and also guide, for example, pruning time or frost protection strategies. Growing degree days allows us to anticipate phenology and also harvest timing. And the drought indicators, for example, supports the irrigation planning and help us understand potential water stress ahead of time. These are all very tailored indicators. All these affect directly improving decision making. The seasonal frost protection, for example, in a seasonal point of view, can help us adjust pruning and plan active frost protection, also identifying sensitive plots. And for water management, we can anticipate water needs, we can optimize irrigation, and also deal with the vineyard heterogeneity more effectively. So having this information ahead of time reduces uncertainty and also increases kind of confidence in our planning. The key benefits of participating in Aspect as a super user, I think overall it has been very positive. First, the Aspect team showed a genuine listening approach. We carried out some meetings and to understand the operational needs of people working directly in the vineyard. So there was a translation of field needs to concrete indicators that make sense in practice. Also, the development process has been very iterative. Our feedback was integrated in the successive versions of these bulletins that Vero was talking about. And lastly, but information, it is very actionable. It's not abstract. It actually may help make us better decisions in the field. Looking forward to the future and opportunities of enhancement in the future, what we can see that stronger climate phenology integration would create a clear storyline, for example, on how to mate season may evolve. Also have a robust disease modeling based on climate predictions, could greatly enhance our ability to anticipate and manage vineyard pathogens. Also, I think it's very important as a next step would be to downscale. Vero will talk about downscale in regional perspective, but I think in the managing point of view, in the vineyard point of view, a plot downscaling would be very, very, very useful to incorporate the microclimatic conditions into these downscale models to even go to make the zoom closer to the plots and see how these model inside the different conditions in each plot could affect the evolve of the season. And this was taking into consideration the viticultural point of view, and in a global point of view, in the terms of use these technologies into decision-making process. First of all, I think managing the uncertainty of predictions is one of the main challenges when adapting climate-based tools. When to take the decision when you have the information, and what is the uncertainty of the information, and which is the threshold that you can take decisions that according to these climate models. So in a ways to climate informed decision, how we integrate this in the decision-making process, the climate informed information. So I think this is very important to help understand uncertainty and how to assess when to take decisions. Also, as Antonio asked and Vero said, we are looking at which is the economic impact of these climate-informed decisions. And I think this is now a part of the project right now. And it will be also very, very important to see the real economic impact, how decisions we make impact not only on the vineyard, but also as a company, what economic impact have in the future in terms of overall strategy, quality, wine quality, the risk we take adapting, making these decisions in advance, and I think it's very interesting to take a further step into this. So to conclude, aspect I think is helping us more from a reactive to anticipatory vineyard management. I think this is very important and will be very important in the future, not to react to the environment, but to take decisions in advance. We've seen climate variability is increasingly intense, and having this type of information is becoming essential. So thank you very much for your attention, and happy to take any questions you may consider.
Great, thank you very much, Xavi. And also I would like to give the floor to Antonio to tell us also his perspective as an external user not involved in the project. What do you think about the bulletin? How do you find the information and the indicators that we provide there?
Thank you, Andrea. Well, I think it's really interesting. What I found most striking is the downscaling that you are providing, because when dealing with vineyards, we typically need information at a much higher resolution than was traditionally available. I also like very much the format of the charts that you have chosen, and the way the information on water management with all the different variables and bioclimatic indices are offered. I think that this approach for seamless integration is absolutely necessary, because the decision maker, and Xavi has just mentioned that the decision maker needs to integrate their short-term decisions within the long-term management of the vineyard. And the vineyard is a structure, is an investment that is meant to last decades. And I'm not sure about, well, actually, I believe that in Catalonia, as in Portugal, if we look at the average longevity of a vineyard these days, we recognize that it is far lesser than it used to be 30, 40 years ago. And we are very worried with that because every year of less longevity is 1 year less of return on the investment that was made. So in order to strengthen the case, the investment case for viticulture, we need to extend the longevity of vineyards so that it still makes economic sense to keep on investing in these production models. There is, however, another important issue that I would like to call your attention to, which is the fact that we are seeing that when we look in detail at what is happening today, we are finding phenomena that we did not see before. This is something that we have been recognizing in the last 5, 6 years in the Douro Valley, where, as you know, we have extremely high temperatures during summertime. And in this year, we had a situation that was not visible on the monthly averages, for example. You had to look into the daily information that wiped out about 40% of the production in the region in 2 months. Andrea, can I share my screen for a moment?
Yeah, of course.
Because I think this will illustrate better than me just talking about it. So you can see here, this is the temperature evolution from May 1st until August 31st in the East Douro Valley. And you see here we have the level of 39 degrees. And then we have 1, 2, 3 heat waves in here. But what is striking and what caused the collapse in the physiology of the main variety we have there was that by the end of each heat wave, we have a huge drop in temperatures. So we have it here, we have it again in here, the drop of more than 10 degrees, and to a lesser extent, we still have it here, not really 10, but 9 degrees. And we saw that each time this happened, we had a decrease, a very significant decrease in the weight of the berries. So the berries shriveled, like if the grapevine was getting water out of the berry to survive. Okay, so if you consider, as I showed in my presentation in the beginning, that over the last 30 years, the average berry weight decreased 30%, and then on a specific year, you still have on top of that a situation where in 2 months you lose 40% of the productivity, you can have an idea of just how serious the economic impact is becoming in terms of managing viticulture in this situation. The problem is that this year was not a unique year. We have seen this before, not as seriously as this year, but we have seen this before. So this is piling up. Now, when you consider that you plant a vineyard and you invest in a vineyard, which is meant to last, let's say, 50 years, and then over the course of those 50 years, you have on average a reduction of 30% on your yields. And then on specific years, you still have an added reduction of 20 to 40%. Suddenly, it doesn't make any more economic sense to do viticulture anymore. So this is the kinds of analysis that we now need to start looking at, and we require information like the one you are having on your bulletin to help us make sense of what is going on and develop solutions that can counter and mitigate this situation.
Thank you very much, Antonio. That's a very interesting insights. I don't know if there are any comments. Okay, so then thank you both, Xavi and Antonio, and we'll move on to the final presentation, Keshin from University of Leeds.
Okay, thank you. I'm Keshin Deng from University of Leeds, and today I'm going to share some preliminary results from a survey, a large-scale survey across the European organizations we did last year. So this is about what climate information is important for the agriculture sector, and these insights from this survey. Okay, so our survey is targeted participants who are the risk analysis within climate sensitive organizations, and they came from all sectors, and we have respondents from quite different organization size, and the data is collected through the sample recruitment company Qualtrics platform and our own network through the Aspect project. And this survey is translated into a language, and it is conducted last year from October to January 2024. And in total, we have 1864 respondents, and among these respondents, we have 168 people from the agriculture, forestry, and the fishing sector. So the following results will focus on these 168 respondents from the agriculture. Okay, the first is about their longest planning horizons for such climate risk. And we can see that almost around 81% of these organizations plan 6 months to 10 years ahead for the climate risk in agriculture sectors. And this is good to see that almost 90% of them has already actively used some kind of weather or climate information in their current roles, and the weather forecasts are most frequently used type of climate information in their role, and followed by observations, seasonal and seasonal forecasts. And we can also find there's comparatively few participants indicating that they use longer timescales information like projection and interannual or decadal prediction. And we also ask where are they getting this information from? And we can see the National Meteorological and Hydrological Service, the MHS, and the governance agencies is the most important source of such climate information. And we can see that is the most important source for the weather forecast, for the observations, and also for the sub-seasonal and the seasonal forecast. But for the longer term predictions or projections, we can have IPCC also is important source of like reanalysis data and in the annual or decadal predictions here. And about the use of climate information, we can see the top 5 specific events or trends for the climate information used is about extreme heat events and heavy rainfall events, droughts, and warmer climate over time, or cold spells or steps. So we can say temperature is like Antonio and Javi suggested, that is the very important indicators that people now are focused on. And for the use of climate information in their organizations, we can see currently people in the agriculture sector use weather forecast most for the informing risk management in their organizations, and use weather forecast also for day-to-day activities. But we can also find some use interannual or decadal predictions here for some longer term strategic planning, and also use climate projections for the longer term strategic planning. So that is some good trends. So we found that this kind of seamless, and especially for this longer term predictions or projections, is still helpful for them in the future. Okay, and about their identification of the current information they used, we're happily found 30%, 70% or more respondents agree with all these 11 quality criteria we showed to them. So they found this current climate information is useful, easy to access, and useful for their decision makings. So that is very positive feedback on this current information. But there are still some gaps that they want to solve in the future climate information. For example, most people think that information could be better tailored to their organization's needs, and they need more details about the reliability or uncertainty of the information. And they also want this climate information to better tailor to their organization's geographic scale of interest, like what we have discussed about the downscaling issues. Okay, so that is the current situation of the information used in the agriculture sector, and the Aspect project has already developed the bulletins such as we provide to the Cotonou. And in the following survey we would like to do this year is about your opinions and your suggestions for this kind of new climate information prototype. So in this survey, we introduce a brief version of the bulletins provided for Cotonou, and we want to know you understanding the potential use of such climate information, or your suggestions or suggested improvements for such climate information prototype. And when you answering these questions, you can imagine that this bulletins will tailor to your own organization, your own geographic scale. So help us shape the future of climate information for the wine sector. And please fill this survey or share it with your friends or colleagues in the sector. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Kexin. So you can also find the link to the survey in the chat. And if you can fill this in at a later time, we'll also share it via email. So we have a question in the chat for Antonio. Antonio, do you want to respond in the chat, or do you prefer to respond in person? So the question is, in which way does the drop in temperature after a heat wave worsen the weight of the berries? Is it because it adds stress to the plant? Or for some other reason?
Yeah, I can answer online for the benefit of all. The truth is we don't fully understand yet the physiological mechanism behind it. This is something, as I said, we only started seeing since about 5-6 years, at least in such a wide representation. It mostly affects one varietal, which is Touriga francesa, which is nevertheless the most used varietal in the Douro Valley, representing about 25% of all vineyards in there, and it is one of the varieties most important for the quality of the wines. We think that it also has got to do with the timing when this heat waves happened, and then the sudden drop in temperature coincided in the second heat wave with the veraison moment. So as you know, during veraison there is a fundamental shift in the circulation of water and metabolites in the plant. So the flow from root to leaves is reduced, and the flow from leaves to berries and trunks increases. when this happened, it was exactly as this metabolic shift was happening. So what it looked like was there was a complete deregulation of the functioning of the plant, but we could not see it in the hydric status of the plant. We monitor pre-dawn leaf water potential on a weekly basis, and we were monitoring it at the time, and we did not see any sudden increase on the stress levels at that point. Yet the thing happened. So as I said, we still don't understand it. We are looking into it. ADVID, which is the organization, the technical organization in the region, has been conducting a lot of data gathering on this climatically and in plants. They have a reference network of vineyards that are monitored. So we hope to have some answers in the coming years, but for the moment, this is all I can say.
Thank you, Antonio. And I wanted to ask Xavi if that's something that you also noticed. Is that an effect that you also see in your vineyards after heat waves?
Well, we haven't particularly seen that temperature drop after a heat wave, but I think heat waves by themselves are enough to reduce the berry growth, since the plant goes under higher stress conditions. The plant, to protect itself, they close stomas and stop functioning in order to lose more water than that would be critical for them. And then this if you reduce photosynthetic period, then you are reducing all the capabilities of the plant, and also for berry growth, and it indeed affects the production. In our case, here in Raimat, this year we had the most hot June of ever of history, and it was coincidental with flowering period, was the end of flowering period, and it affected all varieties. We noticed reductions of 15-20% of berry weight, and also then we had some other heat waves in August that they are becoming more often. And we are already we see them already as typical, because 10 years ago this was not the way we saw, but now they are. And also every heat wave with temperatures that we have measured temperatures in the berry zone, and they go up to 46 degrees. So you can imagine the amount of stress that this causes to the plant, and they affect a lot into the vineyard performance.
Antonio? Yeah.
Yes, and I would like to add something to what Xavi said, which I think is very important. We tend to think in terms of stress of the grapevine only in terms of hydric stress. I think that what we have seen this year is a lot more. I mean, it's of course we had some hydric stress, but it was a lot more than hydric stress, and we have to consider that in regions like Catalonia and the Douro Valley, we also have what can be separated as thermal stress and also radiative stress. You can very well understand that when you have a chloroplast doing photosynthesis, there is a threshold of radiation, sun radiation, that if it is increased, it will overcharge the chloroplasts. And the plant tries to adapt to that any way it can. If then suddenly the temperature drops very quickly, and also the radiation does drop also very quickly. What happens is that the plant cannot cope with the same speed, and this seems to be, this is all hypothetical, but it seems to be what is causing this deregulation in the plant. We have seen that from measurements of photosynthesis activity, that the effect of thermal and radiative stress is indeed something well separated from hydric stress. You can have stressed plants that are not lacking water or water access. And this year it has shown that very well. So this to say, we need to move on developing indicators coming from climate variables, but that translate this functioning of the physiology of the plant towards these mechanisms. And we have to have indicators about these tipping points of the three types of stress. This is something we still don't have now, but with a little bit more data gathering and looking deeply into the issue, I'm pretty convinced that we will be able to start having bioclimatic indicators that can be good proxies for managing these situations that, as Xavi said, are becoming more and more frequent year on year.
Great, thank you both. Then let's go on to short Menti. I will share now the link in the chat. And this is just to see who is in the room, and then we'll go into breakout groups and have a short discussion. We will have about 15 minutes just to get your insights on the bulletin and any other comments that you have. So let me share. So if you can please join through the link in the chat, or scanning this QR code, or using the code at the top. And the first question is just, which is your sector? So are you a wine producer? Do you have another role in the wine sector? Researcher, climate services provider, or user, or any other sector? And feel free to select multiple options. So we have some wine producers, researchers, and climate service providers in the room, and some other roles as well. Great, thank you all. And then the next and final question is, what did you think about the climate information prototype that we showed? Its usefulness for your organization. If it's not, then you can skip this. If you're a researcher, for example, the usefulness for the wine sector, in your opinion, balance of text and images, and how easy it is to understand. And just to remind you, I will show you now the bulletin. So it's a document that gives a summary on frost protection and water management, and different maps and other plots for the next months and seasons. So in case you haven't seen it, this is how the prototype looks. I'll give you all just a minute more. And I see that most of you find it useful for the wine sector and has a good balance of text and images. Great. So feel free to keep voting if you haven't already. And now we will split into breakout groups, have a short discussion, and then we'll be back to say goodbye.
We were talking in our breakout group about the future of these tools and if there is how can we keep on working on these the services once the project finishes. And I think this is I agree with Antonio that it's kind of rule of law that when a project finishes, everything stops, and then we start another project. And maybe we take things from past projects and we keep working and in that areas, but from another perspective. And I think it's one of the keys is that there is an interest, a real interest. There is a real problem that also Antonio was focusing on, and it's real, and it's affecting in the viticultural and the agricultural point of view every day. But we have to convince the people who put money on the companies that this is real, and this will to study this climate change and to take measures and to take into account these tools will be profitable in the future, and maybe will guarantee that the company is resilient or is more resilient than other companies that doesn't take this information into account. That's all.
Thank you, Xavi. And if there are no other comments, I think we can close here. Thank you all for participating and have a lovely day. Oh, yes. Yeah, Adnan. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi Xavi. Sorry, Xavi, that's a very kind, nice comment. I mean, I'm just trying to think about when you say that the company take this kind of information and this use this case. So, I mean, one of the main information which we were talking, I think we had a discussion with Veronica also recently, that I mean, what could be a kind of uncertainty level that you think about that this will be your decision thing, and how much the probability you can take as a decision kind of thing that okay, 20%, 30% of the forecast you will take it if some event has been forecasted in your in the climate information, and you take a decision. So what could be a tolerance level somehow, I mean threshold to take some decision thing?
Well, I was talking about precisely this in my small presentation, that this is also a key point of how to integrate the information in our decision-making process. And we are, I think we are beginning in taking steps into this direction, and there is no clear answer to this, unfortunately.
I agree.
I wish we had, but there is not. And this is something that we will. It is a risk benefit situation that Vina, I think Vina is working in this matter. So it is a very important point for sure.
Thanks. Yeah.
Ina or Antonio? I'm not sure who was first.
No, Vina was first.
I will let Antonio go. We were having this discussion in the breakout group. I'll let Antonio go first. Thank you.
I just want to make sure I understood correctly the question. The question is, what is the threshold that will take a company to adopt a climate service? Is that correct, Adnan? Have we lost him?
Sorry, Adnan?
Adnan, you're muted. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed the question. Yeah, please.
No, I guess you were asking what is the threshold for a company to adopt a climate service? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I can give you a couple of examples because we have been, since Project Euporius back in 2012, we have been using climate services to some extent. We have some very clear-cut situations. For example, when we decided to have our own weather station network instead of relying on third-party weather stations, We started supplying data from our stations to a local startup that was proposing 5-day weather forecasts specifically for the site of the station. This because on our national weather service, sometimes we have the closer station at more than 50 kilometers away and not representing at all what is going on in there. So just on the cost that we spared on spraying treatments that we would not do if we had a rain spell forecast in the coming 5 days. In 2 years, we paid the investment in the weather station network. Okay, so this was a very clear-cut example, and the first thing I used in the company to demonstrate the importance of doing climate-smart agriculture. On the Project MedGold, or after the Project MedGold, we actually published a paper together with Ilaria Vigo and some of the other partners of MedGold project, where we demonstrated that when you have an imbalanced economic result from making one on a binary decision using one situation or the other. I mean, when the value is not 50% to either side, but for example, if you make decision A, you have 80% more value than when you make decision B. In those situations, you can have cases where forecast reliability, meaning a hit rate of the forecast less than 50%, brings value. Even if it is less than 50%. We came to we were, for example, comparing the decision of buying plant protection products early in the season when there was not a lot of demand and therefore prices were lower, and hiring labor also in earlier in the season when there still was labor available at an affordable price, as compared to reacting when the moment comes to actually use it, based on seasonal forecasts. And we came to a situation demonstrated with the values, with real world values, that in 10 years, if you had 20% hit rate, it would make sense to use the climate service, even with just 20% of correct forecasting. So this is the type of probabilistic decision making that I was talking about in my initial presentation. And this is what we still do not see a lot of climate service providers bringing out and explaining this to farmers and users. Because when they do, it dawns on people the value of climate services.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to know about this case because I mean, I did some research in the calculation and I had this kind of numbers. So I'm glad to know. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Bina, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Antonio, for explaining that again with an example. I just wanted to summarize our breakout group discussion. Probably not everyone was present in that group. We had a very fruitful discussion with Antonio and Xavi, and the main point Antonio and Xavi both mentioned is that the project, every research project, when it ends, there has to be a pathway to demonstrate the continuation of the products we develop in these innovative research projects. And the second point we had talked about is how to show a relationship between the climate variables and the economic value, as Antonio just explained or illustrated with an example. And the third point we discussed is what Xavi has already mentioned in this as a continuation of the breakout group, that it is the money which makes the decision for the decision makers at the end users companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Bina. Antonio?
A very last comment regarding this, what Bina just said. I mean, this importance of ensuring the continuation of the results of a project. These projects are funded by the European Union, right? Developing a concept and then waiting for the private market to pick it up and make it a commercial venture is clearly not working. What I think is that the project coordinators, and in this case, I'm also calling here aspect project coordinators to the issue, should make officers aware of this limitation and this problem, which becomes a problem. I mean, this is investment done by the European Union that has no return if then it is not converted into something that can be used by companies and by the society at large. So I guess it is important for coordinators to work together with the project officers in the final part of the projects to ensure as much as possible to use all tools available, be it at the public sector level, like you said for Copernicus, for example, but also by demonstrating the value in ways that commercial ventures pick it up. Because anytime I have spoken about other past climate services with entrepreneurs and climate tech and entrepreneurs, there are plenty of them around. They immediately recognize the value of this, and they are very surprised that they were not aware that this existed. And I'm just talking about 2 projects I participated. If you multiply by the number of climate projects that have been financed by BioHorizon Europe, and then you look what actually became a continued commercial service, it's a very, very small percentage. And this is something that should worry the European Commission, and the project offices should be concerned about.
Thank you very much, Antonio, and thank you to everyone who presented and participated in the discussion. So we're a few minutes past the time, so I think we'll close it here. And everyone have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Thank
much,
you all.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.